And Ronda cannot help herself. What? I don't understand, dude. What is she doing? Why is she still doing this? Okay, how are these stories still coming out? All right, so this is another Ronda Rousey story that we're gonna have to go over. We're gonna do Ronda Rousey in this video. Then we're gonna do Strickland and Mike Perry, a much more interesting conversation. You know, Holly Holm, or I'm sorry, the Ronda Rousey story is just like, you know, I don't even know what to say about this. When you see what she said about the Holly Holm fight now, you're gonna be like, no way. Like, no way. But the Sean Strickland and Mike Perry fight is a conversation way more interesting about fighter pay and a bunch of implications about the fight community in general. And then I'm going to talk about CJI and ADCC. And then we're going to talk about Jared Cannonier and the early stoppage and Jason Herzog speaking out to the fans after a tremendous amount of backlash, obviously. So that is what we're going to do. Now, I decided we're going to start with Sean Strickland and Mike Perry because it's a much more interesting conversation. And then the Ronda Rousey one and Jared Cannonier we will do afterwards. If I remember, I will put timestamps in the description. If I forget, please comment timestamps and I will go in and put them in so you can jump straight to Ronda Rousey if you don't care about the much more important and much more interesting conversation that's going to come before that about ADCC, CJI, and Mike Perry, Sean Strickland's beef. And also, if you're the 30% of people who watch my content consistently and have not subscribed, why don't you comment why? Okay? Because it takes 1 second. It would be very helpful. It's almost like a slap in the face on purpose to me and my effort, and it hurts. I'm just kidding. But if you could subscribe, that'd be awesome. I would appreciate it. And everybody, please like this video. Let's start with this Sean Strickland story and see how this went back and forth between him and Mike Perry, and we'll talk about it.
Over BKFC comments. Recently, Strickland and Perry engaged in a debate about the differences in fighter pay comparing the UFC to the BKFC. During that back and forth, Perry suggested that Strickland should leave the UFC instead of fighting for pesos. Strickland replied, UFC pay is utter garbage. LOL, they're signing guys at 10 out of 10. That should be criminal. But the vast majority...
10 and 10. 10 and 10. 10 to show, 10 to win, not 10 out of 10.
Majority of BKFC fighters are getting paid way less than that. As a UFC fighter, I advocate for better pay for me and the entire roster. You should do the same for your guys.
Anytime that I get into some serious shit online, you know, it's because I'm defending a professional fighter. And I know it sounds kind of ridiculous when I'm like, I feel really protective over these guys, where it's like, you feel protective over UFC fighter. You think they need your fucking protection, guy? And I understand that. But what I'm saying is, like, I've lived more life than most of them. You know what I mean? Like, I've gone through more life than most of them. Not all of them, but most of them. I have 3 kids. I have a wife. I've gone through bouts of having lots of money. I've gone through bouts of being dead broke afterwards. It's fucking hard. So when it comes to finances and knowing what is coming around the corner for a lot of these guys, like, just from personal experience, I don't want to see them have to go through that stuff. So when it comes to, like, you know, fighter pay, of course, I am a huge advocate for people getting paid as much as possible. That said, I've also owned companies and built companies. And the idea that, like UFC, that's a conversation. Fighter pay with UFC, that's a conversation. Fighter pay at BKFC, that is a completely different conversation, okay? Like, the idea that there is all of this money that is not being paid out is a challenging one for me when you all know that BKFC is not profitable. It's not profitable. It's not a profitable company, okay? So, like, Sean Strickland, I don't expect Sean Strickland to have a very nuanced opinion on fighter pay because that's not his job. His job is to be an exceptional fighter and go in there and bang it out and entertain the fans, which he does. You guys, you know what I mean? They're, oh, his fights are boring. Okay, you're not. So if you were going to, grade Sean Strickland in terms of his entertainment value, you'd go, nah, not entertaining. Wrong. He is entertaining. That's why he's a star. So he's doing his job. But it's more, honestly, guys like me and other people who have platforms where we're supposed to be analysts of the industry. And if you have experience building companies, it's my job to tell you guys what the fuck is going on when it comes to fighter pay and things to consider that maybe people haven't considered. Okay. So let me just put it like this. I have this same kind of like issue right now with the Craig Jones Invitational. I'll tell you exactly. And I don't have an issue with Craig Jones Invitational, but when it comes to ADCC, Craig Jones Invitational, I'm going to talk about that right now because it's a good kind of like conversation about fighter pay, right? But like, let's just start with BKFC. Okay, let's say that it cost them $3 million to put on an event including the venue, all the staff, paying the top 3 fights, so the 6 fighters in the 3 biggest fights. Okay, so their payroll, every other thing, let's say it's $3 million, right? And you are going to bring in $2.5 million. Okay, you have to have another 7 fights. You're down $500,000. Every dollar that you pay over your 5 and 5, or let's say that that's all including what they're paying them at 5 and 5 or whatever it is, because that is exactly what's going on. To a degree, I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are, but these guys are making 5 and 5. These guys are making 4 and 4, whatever it is. Okay, well, the company is losing $500,000, and it's probably a lot more than that. Okay, how are they supposed to bump up fighter pay? They're losing money. Like, where does the money come from? Well, investors, investors should invest in the company. Okay, sure. But the challenge is that if the fighters are willing to fight for 4 and 4, and, bumping the pay is not going to get you better fighters at that level, the prelim fighters, you're just giving more money. It's just a bigger loss. So I don't really understand like Mike Perry, when he spoke about it, Mike Perry made the best points I've ever heard a fighter put out there about fighter pay. Seriously. Because what Mike Perry said is, he's like, dude, you have to build the company to get to a place where they can pay guys more money. That's just true. Where's the money supposed to come from? It just sounds like he's had actual conversations with Dave Feldman. I think that Mike Perry, Dave Feldman have a really tight relationship. He's building the organization around him, so he understands. So, I don't know. I just don't understand. Because the UFC, they are profitable, so it is a very different conversation. But the startup companies that are losing money every single time, I don't understand. Where's that money supposed to come from? Anyway, those are my thoughts. Okay, I love both guys. I love Mike Perry, love Sean Strickland. And I do want to comment a little bit on the Craig Jones Invitational at ADCC super quick. So if you're in the grappling community, you already know what the Craig Jones Invitational is and how it relates to ADCC. But if you're not, let me just explain super quick. So ADCC is basically the grappling Olympics. It's a submission grappling event that's done once every 2 years. The winner of ADCC is like the king of submission grappling. It really is like the Olympics, and they only do it once every 2 years. Now, it has grown exponentially over the years. Exponentially. It's a huge show now. They're doing it at T-Mobile this year. T-Mobile is where ADCC is being done. Now, you have to win trial. If you're one of the top pros, then, you get in. But if you are a regular person professionals, but you're not one of these top guys, you have to win the trials to get in, which is a huge deal. I think you have to win 7 fights against all the other best grapplers in your weight class on the West Coast or in Brazil or whatever. Felipe Costa from my gym won the Brazilian trials in, a couple months ago. So that's how he got in. And that's just to get into ADCC. Okay. You don't make any money for that. You don't make any money at all. Then at ADCC, if you win, you make 10 grand. If you don't win, you make no money. All right. You're talking about the absolute best submission grapplers in the world in the most elite top event in the world. So if it's happening at T-Mobile, right, you're planning on filling up T-Mobile and that's the prize. How can that be justified, especially when the prize money has been exactly the same for the last 25 years or whatever? Okay. So that is the side of the argument for why is ADCC keeping all of the money, whatever, right? Well, on the other side, though, as the event has gotten bigger, the argument for ADCC is that as the event's gotten bigger, we've poured all of the money into the actual event and making the production bigger so that we can get more eyeballs in ADCC, and it helps guys build up their profile, and then they can make their money by selling, seminars and building their gyms up and all that stuff, right? So the bottom line is that fair compensation, $10,000 to the winner, and no one else makes any money when it is not there? And they try to present themselves as a nonprofit. I actually don't want to speak specifically about whether ADCC is formed as a nonprofit. They are not, this is how I understand it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay. But as I understand it, they are just a regular corporation. They are not profitable though. Okay. So it's the exact same conversation as we just had, right? So it's oh, well, they're not profitable. So where are we supposed to pay all these guys? And it's okay, but why aren't you profitable? And it's because you're putting all this money into production value and other kinds of things that are meant to build, the event itself. So the problem with that conversation and not paying the guys more is that people are acting as though, they're acting as if because they're not making money, that means that the company is not becoming more valuable, which is ridiculous and 100% inaccurate. So BKFC being the exact perfect example, okay, BKFC is not making money. They have not been profitable at any event yet, right? So people must think that means they're like a failing company. That's not correct, okay? If your revenue is going up, even if you are still losing money, even if you're losing more money, but the revenue is going up, that is building the value of the organization, because there are two sides of building a business. You have, are we trying to build a fully sustainable business where we can just start, becoming profitable and we keep those profits? Or are you trying to build a company that's going to become very valuable and you're going to sell it to a much bigger company that is obviously at some point going to try to make it profitable? Okay, so like BKFC just raised money, as we know. Conor McGregor, UFC, my opinion, UFC is probably the primary money behind that funding round, and they're keeping it a secret. Okay, well, they're raising money at a certain company value. So they're saying like, oh, we want to raise $20 million. Our pre-money value is $100 million, right? So they're saying the company's worth $100 million, they want 10. So that dictates what percentage of the company they're selling for the $10 million investment, right? Or if they wanted to just sell the company outright, that's how much they would sell it for. So the ADCC is not profitable, but they're still growing exponentially as they are. Well, if someone wanted to sell ADCC, it would be wildly profitable. Or like wildly valuable, right? So the fact that it is becoming so valuable, and it would be very easy to get investors, the fact that they have not increased fighter pay or changed the structure, you know what I mean? But it's business. Why would they increase it if they weren't given a reason that they have to? So Craig Jones enters in and he runs the Craig Jones Invitational the exact same weekend as ADCC. Now, someone not doing ADCC is unfathomable, okay? It's an unfathomable thing 2 months ago. But as you guys know, if you pay attention to my channel, this is my jiu-jitsu school and team, Six Blades, okay? And Victor Hugo, pictured here, training with Shanji is the one of the number one. He's IBJJF number one. ADCC is the only one that Gordon Ryan did not submit at last ADCC. If you were going to pick someone who was a favorite, well, obviously Gordon Ryan's always going to be the favorite. But if you were like going down the list of other competitors and you're like, who's most likely to upset, Gordon out of these guys, Victor is easily number one or number two, easily. And Victor is now doing the Craig Jones Invitational because the winner of the Craig Jones Invitational is going to make $1 million. And every single person that participates, the top 16 guys that they can get to go do it in a bracket, is going to get paid $10,001. So you're going to get paid more just to show up to Craig Jones's thing, and you're going to make $1 million if you win, right? Now that's a big motivation to do, the Craig Jones Invitational. So when it first came about, I had an issue with it just because I was like, man, you don't need to do it the same weekend as ADCC, right? Like, you can make the same point if you do it 2 weeks from then. Everybody's in the same, everyone's in good shape and whatever. But the point is that what Craig Jones is trying to make is like, no, that's like once Victor decided to do it, he's going to come on the show and talk about this, by the way. If this is interesting to you guys, he's going to come on and he's going to do the show. But once I heard him talk about it, he's like, the whole thing is not about destroying ADCC. It's like putting them on notice. They have to change. They have to pay the guys. They have to do a better job, and they're going to have to do fighter pay. If he does it on a different weekend, then it just is just some $1 million tournament. If they're to make it very clear that this is targeted at ADCC, has to compete with it. And when I understood that, I'm like, okay, that actually makes sense to me. That does make sense. And so, I mean, listen, dude, actually, I'm not going to speak for Victor on it. I'll let him speak for himself on why he went over there. But I mean, listen, dude, like at the end of the day, $1 million, $1 million. Victor's like 26 years old. Okay. And he's a jiu-jitsu athlete. $1 million is $1 million. He got a very successful school. That's where I start. I mean, well, it's not where I started jiu-jitsu, but that's where I started with Six Blades. I was with Victor for a year before I moved over to headquarters with Shanji. And it was solely due to the location. Like, I was driving an extra 30 minutes each way to get to Victor. It was just too much driving. But I still train with Victor all the time. Bottom line is, fighter pay is complicated, and when you look at ADCC, it's like, okay, they got to pay more. And it's like, but if they are not profitable, where does that money come from? It's just not simple. Conversation is not a simple one to have, bottom line. So that's what I have to say about that. And now I'm going to move on to our next topic. So let's go ahead and look at this story because this is so crazy, dude. All right. So Ronda Rousey claims she had a plan in place to beat Holly Holm in 2014 before she was rocked on her feet early in the fight. Okay, so this is 10 years ago. 10 years ago. 10 years ago is what we're talking about here. We don't need to be making up weird excuses for a fight we lost a decade ago, right? Because if you're going to say something about this fight, it should just be like, good job, Holly. I think on another night I might have gotten the better of her. But if we look, and it's crazy again, given what Ronda's been doing recently, you're just going to have to be like, anyway. So inaugural bantamweight champion Ronda Rousey has revealed that she had a specific game plan in place to beat Holly Holm during their infamous 2014 title fight in Australia before claiming she was out on her feet from the opening exchange. Okay, so first question. What exactly was the game plan? Right? Like what was this amazing game plan that was going to be super different from what Ronda Rousey had done her entire career? Because if I remember correctly, her first however many in a row were judo throw armbar. That's why she was that's why people like me looked at her like, wow, she's incredible, because every single person knew what she was going to do and she did it anyway, right? Everybody knew what she was going to do and she did it anyway. Okay. Her judo, second to none. Her armbar, second to none. Right? Now, she got a little bit of false confidence in the fight right before Holly Holm because she boxed the head off of Beth Correia, who, if we're comparing her striking to Holly Holm is, let's just not, you know what I mean? But what exactly was the game plan against professional boxer and kickboxer Holly Holm? You know what I mean? Where were you going with that? So I want to read this to you again, and then let's just kind of comment on how ludicrous this is. All right, so Rousey, a former undisputed bantamweight champion under the banner of UFC and Strikeforce, headline down under 2014, yada, yada. And she said that after speaking during a recent Q&A session, as she released a memoir on her she revealed she had a specific game plan in place to beat Albuquerque striker Holm before she was rocked on her feet. Ronda Rousey reveals her original game plan for the fight against Holly Holm, but after she got punched the first time, she was out on her feet. What? What are you talking about? That fight was not a 1-round fight. That would make sense if she's talking about the Amanda Nunes fight. But what are you talking about? This fight went 2 rounds. You were out on your feet the entire first round and then also in the second round? It's just I don't understand, man. I don't understand why she says things like this. The Holm fight, I didn't really get to start my process because I literally just got hit right away and it knocked loose all my bottom teeth and I was out on my feet from the very beginning. So there wasn't the same kind of process of what I usually have. My process was usually I would plan out the first exchange and everything that from then on out would be an improvisation within the range of what I trained for specifically for that person. Okay, but so for Holm, what we trained a lot was doing lateral side-to-side movement to herd her towards the cage. When I was basically out on my feet, I couldn't see distance. There's no depth perception when you have had a bad concussion. And she's saying that, she slipped on the stairs and so she was already concussed going in. I was completely unable to carry that out and even think coherently. I wasn't able to operate the way that I usually do. I'm constantly trying to keep the person reacting to what I'm doing. There's no step back and reset and start again. I was constantly always trying to keep pressure on the person and keep. Okay. So listen, dude, listen. Holly's a better striker than you. Holly is better at circling than you. Holly is better at controlling the action on the feet than you. I mean, you can't be the best at every single facet of MMA. I just don't understand how this is I don't know. It was 10 years ago. Why are we doing this? Why are we saying you were out on your feet after one punch? What are you talking about, dude? That's just, I don't know. Even if that's true, What are we doing? Like, if you were out on your feet after the first punch, it's because she landed a really significant punch. Okay, like when Conor McGregor knocked out Jose Aldo, it was Aldo like, listen, like I had a whole game plan, but then when I got knocked unconscious with the first exchange, I wasn't really able to implement that game plan. It's like, right, because Conor knocked you out. Well, yeah, but I mean, like, had he not knocked me out, then I would have implemented my game plan. I would have won. You're all, yeah, but he knocked you out. Well, but in fairness, had he not knocked me out, I had a game plan. Right, but the contest is to see who can knock the other person out or submit them. I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that had I not gotten knocked out with that first exchange, my game plan would have kicked in and I would have won the fight. So that's the story you're telling yourself. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That if you wouldn't have gotten knocked out, you would have won the fight. Yes. Okay. Like, that's delusional. But also in in Ronda's case, it's like, yeah, if I wouldn't have got rocked at the beginning of the first round, then I would have implemented a thing. It's like, dude, you had like 7 more minutes of fighting. 7 minutes. You were just out the whole time. Maybe you were out, later in the second round, right before you got head kicked. I could buy that. She looked a little bit, she looked out at that point. But I guarantee if we went back and watched the first round of that fight, we're like, she said that she was out on her feet that whole time. It would be like, come on, dude. It's just weird. I don't dislike Ronda Rousey. I just think stop doing this. Stop, whatever this thing is that you're doing, just stop doing it. It's not helping you, I promise. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing. All right, so I have not talked about the Jared Cannonier stoppage, and there's no other reason for that than just I figured that this was kind of a universal, a universal opinion, because it was very obvious what happened, at least from my perspective, as soon as it happened. Okay, I was watching it on mute with Gabrielle, and I was like, oh my God, that is a horrendous stoppage. I said it 4 times in a row where she, I was not influenced by anything. I was like, that's a terrible stoppage. Terrible. So I figured it was relatively obvious. So I haven't commented on it, but I wanted you guys to hear what Jared Cannonier said. And then I'm going to tell you guys what I think that I'm not sure if on here they're going to show it, but Jason Herzog actually commented on the stoppage on Twitter. And I thought it was really classy what he said. And then I'll tell you a little bit about my experience. Because one of my really good friends is really good friends with Jason Herzog. I hung out with him. And check this out. You want to know how it was in 2006. All right. And Jason Herzog had just started reffing for the UFC. He's been with them for almost 20 years. And I am apparently 100 years old, given that I hung out with him back then and I was a grown up back then. All right. So let's watch this thing real quick and then we'll talk about it.
Controversial stoppage by Jason Herzog. This past Saturday, Jared faced off against Nasruddin Imavov, resulting in a controversial TKO victory for Imavov. Now, during an appearance on the MMA Hour, Cannonier shared his thoughts on the outcome.
And definitely the absolute worst time for him to step in right after I throw a shot. I'm competently defending myself. You know what I mean? My eyes are clear. I'm looking at my opponent. I'm creating space. I'm just intelligently trying to recover from that sequence. So. I think the ref had more elevated, was more elevated by the whole thing than I was. I was in sort of like autopilot. Okay, this is a bad situation to be in, but I've been here before, so this is where I recover and then try to mount the offense back to take the pressure off of me.
Yeah, and I'm just going to stop him there because I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said, because here's the deal. That is exactly what I said. He got rocked, right? But he's a veteran. This guy is a veteran of the sport, and he knows, right? He knows if he gets rocked, that's not the end. It means he needs to get away from him. If you have to run, you run. You're getting away just to make sure you don't take another shot. It doesn't take that long to recover if you don't take another heavy shot. That's why they might be moving slow and you're expecting them to get hit, but they're doing a good job of not getting hit. And he did that. And then as soon as he was cleared up, he threw if he would have landed that shot, I'm talking Jared Cannonier, that shot that he threw right before they stopped it, he would have knocked him out. Without it, that was a knockout shot. It didn't land, but it was not so far away that it was like you could tell he's got his bearings under him again. And I mean, bottom line, it's a bad stoppage. Is it possible he was going to get clipped again and then go down? Of course, but he didn't. He didn't yet. So I have absolutely zero doubt that when Jason Herzog watched it back, he was like, oh, man, So what Jason Herzog said via Twitter was he said, I know what I was looking at in there, but enough people have given me feedback that I've reevaluated. That's it. He doesn't acknowledge that it was a bad stoppage, but he also is essentially apologizing. You want to know what it sounded like? Exactly like what The Rock said when The Rock had Joe Rogan's back, and then like people absolutely bombarded him. They're all, oh, you're going to defend him when he used the N-word? The Rock? You're going to defend him when he used the N-word? And then he gave that response that was like, oh, I wasn't aware that he had used that word. I've now been illuminated to that or something like that. And I remember reading that and people hammered him for that. They're all, oh, so he just turns on Rogan? He's just going to turn on him? And I'm like, he didn't write that, dude. He didn't write that. You think that The Rock doesn't have a PR team that works in social media? I'm telling you, The Rock wrote the first one. And then when he was getting hammered, this is back when Twitter was still under control from the wokesters that could make any narrative appear to be the narrative. And so they're like, get him, get him, get him. And so his PR team's like, we have to send a response. And he's like, do not throw Rogan under the bus. I don't care what you say. Don't throw him under the bus. They probably sent him, is this okay? And he looked and he's like, all right, that's fine. And, so it's like, I think I didn't get mad at The Rock for saying what he said when I actually read it. I'm like, he didn't say anything. He just said, okay, now I know that he used that word. He didn't say like, wow, I'm not friends with Rogan anymore. So I don't know. Bottom line is, I don't really know what you want Herzog to say at that point, and he has such a track record of good refereeing. Anybody can make a mistake, and I mean, it is what it is. So when I hung out with him, it was during an Andrei Arlovsky fight in 2006, and it was with my boy who I've been friends with for 20 years, right? And so we were at his place, and we watched and Jason Herzog came over to watch. And he had just gotten pulled up to the big leagues to UFC. And so I was, it was cool for me to hang out with him. I was obviously a big UFC fan already. And it was just interesting to hang out. He's like super down to earth. Like he's the kind of guy you can look at and kind of know what he's like. He's just like that. He's like he's zero ego. He's not trying to be like, if my buddy wouldn't have told me that he was a referee, he would have never brought it up. Like he's a UFC referee and he's watching a UFC fight with me, who's a hysterical UFC fan. I don't think he would have ever brought it up, So anyway, he's a really cool dude, man. He's a really cool dude. And even if he wasn't, I thought that response was pretty cool.